My sister slept with my boyfriend, got pregnant, and now my parents want my inheritance. But they didn't see what was coming next. I'm 24 now, but this whole mess started a couple of years ago. Back then, I was dating this guy I met in call him Jake. Things moved fast between us. He was charming, thoughtful, and we had so much in common. At first it felt like a dream. I was completely in love and genuinely thought he was the one I'd marry someday. After a year together, I decided it was time to introduce him to my family. Now, my family's, let's just say traditional. We come from a conservative culture where dating is tightly regulated. Who, how, and when all matter to them. They weren't thrilled when they met Jake. It wasn't like they were rude, but I could feel the disapproval. They just gave me that, "Are you sure about him?" kind of vibe. I ignored it. I figured they'd warm up to him eventually. Surprisingly, while my parents stayed cold, my sisters hit it off with Jake immediately. Grace, who was 22, and Emma, who's only 11, really liked him. That made me happy. Family approval, even partial, felt like a win. Grace, especially, seemed to really enjoy his company. We even used to joke that she was stealing my boyfriend. Emma adored him too, but she's just a kid, so it didn't seem weird. Jake and I didn't live together because in my culture, that's a big no unless you're married. We worked in different cities and would meet up whenever we could. I trusted him completely. He was kind, attentive, and seemed close with the people I loved. What could go wrong? Well, 3 months after Jake met my family, everything unraveled. I was spending the weekend at his place. Everything felt normal. We grabbed food, watched a movie, nothing unusual. He went to shower, and his phone buzzed. I'm not the type to snoop. I believe in trust, but that night, something just felt off. The phone kept buzzing, and something in me snapped. I picked it up. Maybe deep down I already knew something was wrong. When I unlocked it, there was a message from Grace. At first, I didn't think anything of it. She's my sister, right? But when I opened the chat, my whole world stopped. The texts were flirty. Like let's hook up kind of flirty. I scrolled further. It got worse. There were months of messages, late night texts, inside jokes I'd never heard, even plans to meet in secret. I was in shock. My hands were shaking. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to myself, then just walked out. I didn't wait for Jake to come out of the shower. I didn't give him a chance to explain or lie. I just left. Once I got home, the calls and messages from Jake came flooding in. He must have known I'd seen something. I ignored him. I couldn't even look at my phone without wanting to scream. Eventually, I sent the screenshots to our friend group chat and blocked him. I didn't care what kind of drama it would stir up. I was done. I had no tolerance for betrayal. But what shattered me the most was Grace. Jake, cheating hurt, sure, but my sister, that was a different kind of pain. Grace wasn't just family, we were best friends. We practically raised each other, especially with our parents being emotionally absent most of the time. We'd always leaned on one another, or so I thought. The next morning, I couldn't take it. I booked a flight and went home to confront her. I didn't care if I caused a scene. This wasn't just a fight. This was my whole reality breaking down. When I walked into my parents' house, Grace was just sitting there at the kitchen table like nothing happened, scrolling through her phone. I slammed the screenshots in front of her. My parents were right there too. Grace didn't even flinch. She looked at the messages, shrugged, and said, "Yeah, I did it. So what?" No apology, no guilt, just indifference. I wanted to scream. How could she be so cold? My mom lost it. She slapped Grace across the face, something I'd never seen her do. My dad exploded too, yelling and telling her to get out. They gave her a week to move out. I thought that was the end of it, that maybe justice had been served. But 2 days later, Grace dropped another bomb. She was pregnant with Jake's baby. I was stunned. It had gone from bad to catastrophic. My parents, who'd just kicked her out, suddenly changed their tone. The anger vanished. The disappointment faded. Grace was pregnant and now they couldn't abandon her. They said she needed support. Just like that, she became the victim. That's when I snapped. I told them all how twisted this was, how they were enabling her, how they didn't care what she did to me. They told me I was being dramatic and needed to calm down. I wasn't having it. I packed up, told them never to contact me again, and left. The only person I kept in touch with was Emma. She's still a kid. I didn't want to punish her for the adult's choices. 2 weeks later, my mom messaged me from a new number. She sent me a wedding invitation. Jake and Grace were getting married. She actually had the audacity to say I should come for the sake of family unity. I blocked her again. I thought that was the end of it, that maybe now I could breathe, but I was wrong. The real chaos was just beginning. After I cut them all off, I tried to move on. I kept my distance, stayed in touch only with Emma, and focused on healing. But when you have a family like mine, drama has a way of finding you. A couple months later, a cousin I still speak to told me Grace was having a baby shower thrown by my parents, a big one, with tons of guests. I wasn't shocked. Of course they were going to throw her a celebration like she was some saint. But then my cousin told me something that really pissed me off. My parents were telling people that I was the one who abandoned the family, that Grace was the good daughter trying to hold everything together. Can you believe that? After everything she did, I wanted to call my mom and set the record straight, but I held back. I wasn't going to get sucked back in. Still, I was burning inside. They had the nerve to flip the story, to paint me as the villain. A few days later, Emma texted me with another update. My mom was apparently going around telling people I needed to get married soon. Not because she cared about me, but because she didn't want the gossip. Grace was the younger one, getting married and having a baby before me, and, to my mom, that looked bad. I hadn't spoken to them in months, and somehow they were still worried about how I made them look. That's all it ever was, appearances. Grace's betrayal didn't matter. My heartbreak didn't matter. What mattered was what other people thought. And that's when I realized this wasn't just betrayal. It was abandonment disguised as tradition. And I was done playing along to everyone else. The fact that I wasn't living according to Grace's timeline was somehow a scandal. And yeah, that made me furious, but underneath the anger was something deeper, sadness. It was becoming painfully clear that no matter what I did, it would never be good enough for my family. Even after cutting them off, they still managed to spin the story to make me the villain. Eventually, Grace's wedding happened. Of course, I didn't go, but my cousin filled me in. Apparently, it was this big, over-the-top celebration. My parents went all out, even though Grace was just a few months pregnant. They tried to smooth over the scandal by telling everyone the marriage was just them being responsible, getting things done before the baby arrived. My cousin also mentioned my parents were telling people I couldn't attend because of work commitments. Sure, what really stung wasn't just the lies, it was the fact that they were still putting on this performance, pretending everything was fine, like they couldn't face the truth, not even with themselves. They'd rather fake a happy family than admit things were crumbling. I had already written them off by this point, but hearing about it still hurt. It felt like they were rewriting the family story and erasing me completely. I tried to move on. I threw myself into work and started building my own life, something stable, something just mine. For a while, it was quiet. No drama, no texts, fake apologies. And I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd finally left me alone. But that's not how things work in my family. One night, my phone rang. It was late. I was about to go to bed, but something about the call made my heart drop. It was Emma. She was crying so hard she could barely speak. And then she said her dad had passed away. I was stunned. Sure, we weren't close, but he was still my dad. And what broke me wasn't just the news, it was finding out from Emma. My mom hadn't said a word. Emma told me he had been sick for a while, but my mom decided not to tell me. She thought it would stress me out. Seriously. My father was sick and dying, and they thought I didn't deserve to know. The next morning, I didn't think twice, booked a flight home. I didn't care about the chaos anymore. I just needed to be there for Emma. Walking into my parents' house felt like walking into enemy territory. My mom and Grace were already there, and the second they saw me, they went off. They said I only came back for the money, like I hadn't just lost a parent, like grief wasn't real, unless it benefited them somehow. Grace, as usual, was the worst. Called me selfish, said I abandoned them when they needed me. No one even gave me a chance to mourn. All they cared about was the inheritance, who got what. It was disgusting. Then came the reading of the will and everything exploded. Turns out, my dad left me the largest share of his estate. I was stunned. I hadn't expected anything from him, especially after how everything had gone down. But it was right there on paper. I got 40%, Emma 30%, Mom 20%, and Grace 10%. You'd think I would have felt some sense of relief. like maybe, finally, some part of the truth had been acknowledged. But instead, it only made things worse. Grace and her husband completely lost it. They demanded I give up my share, said I didn't deserve it, said Grace needed the money more because she had a child. They even threatened legal action like that would intimidate me. I knew they didn't have a case, but the fact that they were willing to drag this into court just showed how ugly things had become. It wasn't about love, or loyalty, or even decency. It was about greed. I told them flat out I wasn't giving up anything, and that's when Grace's husband started making threats, told me I'd regret it if I didn't cooperate. I wasn't scared exactly, but I was rattled. I'd just lost my dad, and now I had to deal with this mess on top of it. Back at the hotel, I sat in silence. Everything was swirling around in my head, every betrayal, every lie, every moment I'd been cast as the villain for simply setting boundaries. And I knew something for sure. I was done letting these people bully me. I was finally done. A couple days later, I got a message from my lawyer. We had a meeting to wrap up more estate details, and I was just ready to put the whole nightmare behind me. But when I walked into his office, he handed me an envelope. My dad had written me a letter before he died and asked the lawyer to give it to me when the time was right. I stared at it for a while, unsure if I even wanted to open it. I had such mixed feelings about him. He'd left me the largest share, sure, but he also hadn't stood up for me, not once, when Grace blew my life apart. I was angry, but I missed him too. It's weird how you can feel both things at once. Eventually, I opened the letter. It was short, just a few paragraphs, but it landed hard. He apologized, said he knew he'd failed me, said he should have done more, that he felt trapped by my mom and the drama with Grace, that he regretted how things ended between us. I didn't know what to feel. Part of me felt a little closure, but part of me was furious. Why wait until it was too late? Why not speak up when it mattered? The rest of the meeting passed in a blur. I couldn't stop thinking about how different things might have been if he'd just had the courage to stand by me. On my way back to the hotel, Emma called again. She was upset. Grace had been going around town, spreading more lies. People I was trying to steal the inheritance, that I was trying to divide the family. It didn't shock me. Grace has always known how to make herself look like the victim, but it still hurt. Even after everything, she was still out there dragging my name through the mud. That night, I picked Emma up and we went out for dinner. I needed to see her, to remind myself that not everything was broken. We talked about everything, and I told her none of this was her fault. She was caught in the crossfire. And I hated that for her. But just when I thought I'd had enough, things got even worse. The next morning, I woke up to dozens of missed calls and messages from unknown numbers. At first, I thought it was spam, but then I read them. Threats, insults, accusations, people saying I was tearing the family apart. Someone even wrote that I'd pay if I didn't back down. I had no clue who was sending them, but I had a strong feeling Grace's husband had something to do with it. He'd already made one threat. This wouldn't be a surprise. I forwarded everything to my lawyer, just in case things escalated, but it was starting to get scary. Family drama is one thing, threats are a whole different game. Later that day, I walked outside to find that someone had slashed my tires. All 4 of them. Every single tire was slashed. I was completely freaked out. I mean, who even does that? I knew Grace and her husband were angry, but this was another level. It felt like they were willing to go to any lengths just to get what they wanted. I called the police and filed a report, but I didn't hold my breath. I doubted they'd find who did it. Still, I wasn't about to let them scare me into hiding. I was already going through so much. The last thing I needed was to feel afraid. Every time I stepped outside, the hotel staff was really helpful. I told them what happened, and they increased security around the property. That gave me a bit of comfort, but deep down, I knew this wasn't going to be over anytime soon. A few days later, we had another meeting with the lawyer to finalize things. Grace and her husband showed up, and the tension in that room was suffocating. They didn't say a word to me, but the glares, I felt them like knives. After the meeting, Grace's husband pulled me aside and told me, in the most smug voice, that I was making a huge mistake, that I'd regret not giving up my share, that this wasn't over. I didn't even respond. I just walked away. There was no way I was going to let a bully like him get under my skin. But even as I left, I knew he wasn't bluffing. They weren't going to stop until they had everything. That night, I sat down and tried to absorb everything that had happened since my dad passed. The lies, the manipulation, the threats, the vandalism. It was all too much. I just wanted it to stop. I wanted peace, but I knew that peace wasn't going to come unless I stood up and fought for it. I wasn't going to let Grace and her husband win. Not after everything they'd done. This was my life, my inheritance, and I wasn't backing down. Things didn't cool off after that meeting. In fact, it got worse. Grace and her husband seemed to grow more desperate by the day. The threatening texts kept coming, always from unknown numbers, and I was completely worn out, mentally and emotionally. One night, about a week after the tire slashing, I came back to the hotel after dinner with Emma. She'd been staying with me for a few days, which honestly helped a lot. Just having her around gave me a sense of normalcy in the middle of all this madness. We walked into the hotel lobby and there was this guy just standing there, watching us. At first I tried to brush it off. Maybe he was waiting for someone, but when we passed by him, he followed us. I didn't want to panic in front of Emma, but my whole body tensed up. We got into the elevator, and as the doors closed, I turned to her and asked, "Did you see that guy?" She nodded, her eyes wide. "Yeah." He was staring at us. As soon as we got to our room, I called the front desk and told them what happened. They said they'd review the security footage and send someone to patrol our floor. That helped a little, but I still couldn't shake the feeling that Grace's husband had something to do with it. Who else would go to these lengths? I barely slept that night. Every tiny sound made me jump. I kept thinking someone was going to break in, or worse. It was like living in a thriller movie I never asked to star in. The next morning, I called my lawyer and told him everything about the guy in the lobby, the threats, the tires. He agreed things had gone too far. We filed for a restraining order against Grace's husband the next day. It wasn't something I wanted to do, but I had to protect myself. Enough was enough. Of course, that didn't sit well with them. The threats started ramping up again. More nasty messages, more intimidation. But this time, I wasn't rattled. I was furious and determined to see this through. When the court date for the restraining order finally came, I showed up with my lawyer. And who else was there? Grace and her husband. They looked smug, like they thought this whole thing was beneath them. I didn't even glance at them. I kept my focus on what my lawyer was saying, but I could feel their eyes on me the whole time. When the judge called us up, Grace's husband tried to play it cool. He made it sound like I was the crazy one, that I was exaggerating everything, that I was just bitter and trying to ruin their lives. I almost laughed. This man had slashed my tires, sent me anonymous threats, stalked me at a hotel, and I was the problem. Luckily, the judge saw through his lies. After hearing both sides, the restraining order was granted. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe a little. It wasn't the end of everything, but it was a step in the right direction, a small but real win. Of course, things didn't magically improve overnight. The threats didn't stop immediately, and I still looked over my shoulder more often than I'd like. But I had legal protection now. That made a difference. A few weeks passed. I was still staying at the hotel, but I had started apartment hunting somewhere safe, somewhere fresh. Emma had gone back home, and while I missed her like crazy, we stayed in touch constantly. She was still caught in the mess, but not like I was. And I was grateful for that. Then, one morning, I woke up to a message from another unknown number. But this time, it wasn't a threat. It was a link. I hesitated, then clicked it and my stomach dropped. Someone had created an entire website about me. It was filled with lies, twisted stories, and pure character assassination. I was being painted as this heartless, money-hungry monster who was tearing the family apart. There were even pictures of me from the funeral, with captions calling me cold and ungrateful. I couldn't believe it. This wasn't just drama anymore. It was calculated. It was obsession. I sent the link to my lawyer right away. He told me to screenshot everything, and we immediately started the process of having the site taken down. But honestly, I was numb. After everything, I didn't even have the energy to cry. I just wanted it to be over. That night, I talked to Emma. She was so upset about the website. She wanted to help, but there wasn't much she could do. I told her not to get involved more than she already was. None of this was her fault. We talked about Grace, about how she was walking around acting like none of this ever happened, still pretending to be the victim, still wearing that fake smile like she was completely innocent in all of it. I went to bed that night, drained. But there was one small comfort: I had a plan. The site would be taken down. The restraining order was in place, and I had people in my corner. The next morning, I got an email from my lawyer saying the website had been removed. Finally, something good. It felt like the tiniest win in a war that just wouldn't end, but I'd take it. At least now I had a little control back. I knew Grace and her husband weren't going to stop anytime soon. But something had shifted. I wasn't scared anymore. I was angry, yes, tired, definitely. But the fear, it was gone. I wasn't going to let them run my life. They could try whatever they wanted, but I wasn't giving up. Not now, not ever. And that brings me to the final stretches when I thought maybe, finally, things were going to calm down. Court victory should have brought closure, but of course, my family drama had other plans. I mean, I knew Grace and her husband weren't just going to disappear quietly, but even I couldn't have predicted how far they'd take it this time. About 2 weeks after the restraining order was granted, I finally started to relax. For once, I could breathe without constantly looking over my shoulder. I was even thinking about moving out of the hotel and getting an apartment somewhere stable and permanent. But then, out of nowhere, something strange happened. One morning, I got a package delivered to the hotel. No return address. That should have been my first warning sign. I opened it, assuming it was maybe a mistake or a mix-up, but inside was an old, beat-up notebook. I figured it was trash at first, until I flipped it open, and that's when things took a seriously dark turn. The entire notebook was filled with handwritten notes about me, page after page of scribbled observations, my schedule, people I'd been with, dates, locations. There were even details about my dad's will. Whoever had written it had been watching me closely. I felt this wave of panic rise in my chest. Someone had been tracking my every move. I immediately called my lawyer and sent him photos. He was just as disturbed as I was and told me to contact the police right away. So, I did. They collected the notebook as evidence, but I wasn't holding my breath. Realistically, I knew this wasn't going to be some open and shut case. After that, I barely left my hotel room. I only went out when absolutely necessary. Emma was still checking in on me, and even she was freaked out. She didn't know who could have done it, but we both had the same suspicion: Grace's husband. I mean, who else would have the motive and be this obsessive? A few nights later, I was heading back to my room after grabbing dinner, and I saw him. The same guy who'd been loitering near the elevators weeks ago, the one who'd stared at Emma and me. He was back, pretending to scroll through his phone, but I knew he was watching me. Again. I didn't flinch. I walked right past him like I hadn't noticed anything. But the second I was inside my room, I locked the door and called hotel security. They checked the cameras and sent someone up, but I didn't feel safe anymore, not even close. I called Emma and told her everything. She was terrified for me, and honestly, that made it worse. I hated that she was tangled in all of this, caught in the middle of something so twisted, but we made a plan to meet up the next day somewhere away from the hotel, somewhere safer, just to talk things through. The next day, we met at a small cafe downtown. We sat for hours, just going over everything: what had happened, what could happen, what to do next. Emma filled me in on how things were at home. Grace, as usual, was acting like nothing happened, like she hadn't dragged me through hell and tried to take me to court over our dad's will. Then Emma dropped a bomb on me. She said Grace's husband had been asking around about me, asking where I was staying. That was it. The guy at the hotel, the notebook, it was all connected. He wasn't just watching me. He was actively gathering information, and who knew what he was planning next. I knew I had to leave. That night, I packed up everything I had and checked out of the hotel. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, not even Emma. I didn't want her getting caught in the crossfire. I booked a room at a different hotel across town and tried to disappear for a bit. The next few days were quiet. No weird texts, no calls, no creepy men lurking near elevators. But I didn't relax. I knew better by now. Then came the call that changed everything. My lawyer phoned out of the blue. He told me that Grace's husband had been arrested. Apparently, he'd tried to break into my old hotel room. I don't know what he was planning to do once he got in, but thankfully he never got the chance. I felt a mix of emotions: relief that he was finally caught, and outrage that it had come to this. Who does something that extreme over an inheritance? The police said I might have to testify, and I was fine with that. whatever it took to make sure he couldn't come near me again. After that, things actually started to calm down. Slowly, but noticeably. The police kept me informed. My lawyer was confident that with the charges Grace's husband was facing, he wouldn't be able to pull anything like this again. A few weeks later, I moved into a new apartment, a real home, safe, quiet, and nobody in my family knew where it was. I kept in touch with Emma, of course, but even she didn't know the address. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I didn't want her to accidentally let anything slip. It's been a few months now. I wish I could say life is totally normal again, but that wouldn't be the truth. There's still this little piece of me that's always alert, always watching, always waiting for the next thing, but I'm working on it. I'm rebuilding. When I look back at how this all started, from Grace betraying me with my boyfriend, to threats, police reports, court hearings, and now restraining orders and arrests, it feels surreal, like someone else's life. But one thing is for sure, I came out stronger. I've learned that no one, not even your own blood, has the right to tear you down or take what's yours. And I'm done playing nice just to keep the peace. This is my life now, and I'm not letting anyone take that away from me again.